It is written by two of our professors, Professor Elizabeth Bajan and Professor Molly Falk. There are copies available in the library if you don't want to buy it. There are copies available in the bookstore if you would like to have your own. And that book talks about writing papers in general so that it's useful for writing competition at Brooklyn Law School. It is also useful for any courses in which you are writing a paper and you would like some guidance on how to write the paper. So let me stop now and ask if there are questions about the school's writing competition at the end of the year, and then I will go on to talk about writing competitions sponsored by law schools across the country, which is the subject of this meeting. So questions about our school's writing competition? Okay. I'm going to, now for those of you who, I'm trying to decide whether I should say, if you don't want to find out about our school's writing, about inter-school writing competition, then you should leave, or whether that would be too disruptive. Does anyone, do you feel like you're in a rush? Okay, stay here. The reason why I had this put on the overhead is that I want to show you something which you may or may not be aware of. On our homepage, if you click students, can you click both? I'll click students. Can you help me with this? If you could click students, and then under students, see where it says quick links? Click writing competitions at the bottom of that. And what you get is, thank you, a complete list of the writing competitions that I have been notified of and therefore put on our webpage. What you'll see is that you can click on any particular subject area. If, for example, you've just written a paper in a corporation seminar, and you want to see if there is any writing competition that it would be useful for, what you can do is click on business law, and that will take you to the competitions on business law. Can you click on business law? Sure. The thing about these competitions is that you never know for sure what's there, because it varies sometimes per the year, and the competitions have different subject areas, and more to the point, they also have different deadlines. So because you're all going to be lawyers, the first thing that you do is look for the deadline. Some of these are both, the deadline for both of these has passed. The Hirschman Student Writing Competition, the school did submit a paper which the business law faculty had decided was going to be our nominee. There are different ways of entering a writing competition. With most of them, you can simply enter on your own. You don't need to have a faculty sponsor. What you need to do is simply check the rules of the writing competition, and you can find that out by clicking on the web page for that particular writing competition, or dialing whatever the telephone number is and talking to this person to get more information. So that even if the New York Business Law Journal has a deadline of June 15th, 2002, they may very well have a 2004 writing competition and simply haven't sent it to me. If you call that number, you can find out about what sort of writing competitions are available. So that the writing competitions require initiative on your part. They're all up there, they're listed, but you're the one that needs to make the effort to check out the list to see if there are writing competitions that you can submit a paper to. The best thing about writing competitions is that when you enter a writing competition, you will have done it with work that you have already done for something else. It may be a paper in a course, in a seminar. It may be that you're on a journal, and for various reasons, it could be preemption or any other reason, the article that you wrote on the journal is not going to be published. Here you have a very fine piece of writing. If you look on the writing competition list, you may find something that fits within the category of a paper you have already written. And then you can simply submit it and then wait to hear what the possibilities are. So that's basically the procedure you should look at. The main thing to do is to be aware of these writing competitions, and that when you have a paper, to see if there are any competitions that you can submit. What do you get for this? If you win a competition, or if you're one of the top 3 prize winners, this is something that you put on your resume. This is something that is very impressive to an employer. A number of these competitions have cash prizes as well, or sometimes scholarships. And so you can get both the added status and the financial advantage if you take advantage of the competitions using material that you probably already have available. I'd like to introduce Jennifer Stone, who is someone who can tell you about her experience with writing competitions. And in fact, I just got the announcement this morning from the New York State Bar Association Labor and Employment Law Section competition. And last year, Jennifer was one of the people who won one of these awards. So why don't I ask her to say a few words.
Thank you. I'm a third year. My name is Jennifer Stone. And Professor Walter asked me to tell everyone about my experience during the writing competition and to give you some words of advice from my own experience. And I think that those of you who are first years, this will actually be beneficial for you too, because all the things that I'm going to say will apply to the end of the year writing competition as well. Basically, I took Professor Walter's employment discrimination class, and she gave us the option to write a paper instead of doing the final. And I knew there was an issue of employment law that I was really interested in and wanted to write the paper about. So I took the paper option, and we had several drafts that we had to turn in over the course of the semester. And every time I turned in a draft, she gave me feedback. So I took the feedback and incorporated it into the next draft. And she knew about the writing competition already, so she made the deadline for the papers about two or 3 weeks, I guess, before the deadline of the competition. So that actually worked out really well. She gave all of us feedback on our papers in anticipation of turning it in for the competition, and she encouraged us all to turn it in. So then I turned it in, and a month or so later, I found out that I won 3rd place. So that was really great, and I put it on my resume, and I won $300, so that was good too. So I thought of 5 pieces of advice, I guess, I would give everyone who wants to enter a writing competition. The first is to find a professor that will work with you. I know that my paper wouldn't have turned out to be half the paper it was without Professor Walter's help, because for several reasons. First of all, she's a writing professor as well as employment discrimination, so she knew about my topic, and she obviously knows about writing, so she was able to help me in both of those areas. But I've heard some stories that not all professors are really willing to help on papers. So if you find that problem with a professor who's knowledgeable in your topic, I would encourage you to find a professor who's just knowledgeable about writing in general, or who's just willing to look at your paper. Every professor I've ever asked to look at a paper has been willing to do it. So I think that it's important enough that you look around and ask professors and see who's enthusiastic about helping you. And I think you'll be able to do that. And I don't think it's that bad if they're not really considered an expert in your field. The second piece of advice I would give is, when you're looking for writing competitions to enter into, we have the website, but you can just do a Google search for writing competitions, and also for journals that are willing to accept publications. So if you just go to Google and type in your topic and the words writing competition, things will pop up. I think that initially that's how I found the information about the one that I entered, because I just typed in a Google search and it popped up. So I'd highly recommend doing a Google search for journals and for writing competitions. Third piece piece of advice is not to be discouraged by rejection. And the reason I say that is because on the other side of the coin, I have a paper that I've been working on for like 2 years, and it's been rejected twice, and I'm still trying to submit it, and I'm still working on it. But I think, like, especially after you've submitted a note for journals, say, your second year, if it doesn't get published, I would really encourage you to submit to other journals or to writing competitions, because that's a really good piece of work that you have. You've worked hard on it. And if worse comes to worse, you're just going to have a great writing sample to give your future employers. So it's not going to be a waste of your time. Best case scenario, you win the competition and you have something great for your resume. So I don't think it's going to be a waste. That sort of leads me to my next point, which is really, like, you can't be lazy about it. You have to actually do it. And the reason I say this is because, especially in third year, we get sort of lazy and we're trying to do as little work as possible. But this is the only time in your life where you're going to really have time to do this writing. And it really doesn't take that much work if you already have something you've worked on. So it's worth the effort and it's worth the time. Like I said, the worst thing that happens is you have a great writing sample, and you can use that for interviews for the next few years. My last piece of advice is to focus on the first part of the paper, and by that I mean the title and the introduction, because that's the first thing that everyone's going to read, and it really needs to be something that will catch their attention and make them interested in reading the rest of the paper. So I would advise you to have a catchy title, even something that might seem a little corny. My title was called The Bottom Line of the Bottom Line Defense. And I mean, I don't know how much like that made someone read it, but to me at least it seems like it would take them along to the introduction. And sometimes the introduction is all people will read in the beginning anyway when they're going through the initial part of the screening process. So you just want to work really hard on the introduction and make it seem really good and really interesting, so they'll want to continue to read the rest of the paper. And that's it for me. I think we'll take questions now.
Yeah, are there any questions either for myself or for Jennifer? Yes.
I have a question. I know that you said that you incorporated your professor's feedback, but can you also give your paper to friends to look over and edit?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think maybe I gave my paper to some of my friends to look at. I definitely would advise another set of eyes looking at it, because when you write the paper, you're just like sucked into it, and you're also an expert on the topic. And so oftentimes, like when you're writing for someone who's an expert like you, and your average reader wouldn't be able to understand what you're trying to say.
Right, I just didn't know because normally you can't show papers to.
Oh, right. Well, for the writing competition in school, it's different. You can't solicit help from anyone for that writing competition. But for these, you can have help from professors or for friends.
Yes.
Is it normally the case that deadlines are for individuals after the first year to write during the summer before their second year, or is it generally you write during the second year?
When you say, you mean the deadlines for the writing competition sponsored by outside schools?
Outside, yeah.
Generally, it works by semester, so that if there is a writing competition that has a deadline of February 14th, you will have to have written the paper in the fall semester for a paper. And the same thing will be true in the spring of your second year. If you then have a paper from the spring of your second year, you can use it for a writing competition for the following year. There are some dates that are really a problem. For example, with this employment law competition, I teach that course in the spring semester. If the deadline had been in the fall and the person who wrote a paper had graduated, then it wouldn't have worked out. Generally, people don't write over the summer. That's one of the beauties of the writing competition, that you're taking a paper that you have already written in a course and gotten academic credit for, or an independent study project, so that for the most part it does not require extra work. It's merely taking advantage of work that you've already done. Other questions? Okay, one more thing I wanted to notice, oh, I'm sorry, yes.
I'm assuming you can only submit one paper to one publication at a time.
Well, it depends on the deadlines. For example, I was talking with a faculty member about 2 copyright competitions. One of them has a deadline of something like mid-March, and the winner is announced at the end of May. The other one has a deadline of June 30th, so that you could submit a paper to the first one. If it won, that's good. If it didn't win, you could then submit that same paper to the second one, because you would already have known that the paper did not win the first competition. What you need to do is to check the rules of each competition, because you're right, often they will say that they will not take a paper that has been, certainly that has been published elsewhere. I'm not sure, and it may vary from one competition to the other, about whether they say you cannot have submitted this paper to any other source. Yes?
Is one thing better than the other to try and get it published in another journal or to submit it to a writing competition? Should you just try both directions, or
Yes.
is one better than the other?
I think generally within law schools, getting something published in a journal may be a bit more prestigious. Would you?
Well, I wanted to add actually that while certainly getting it published in a law review or journal is on the face more prestigious, nonetheless getting anything published in a trade, what we call a trade journal, like the Journal of Employment Law, not a law school sponsored law review or journal, can be very impressive because you're carving out a niche for yourself. So for example, we had a graduate a couple of years ago who wrote twice on intellectual property. In neither case was this published in a law review or journal. It was published in what I call a trade journal. She was able to get a job at a major firm on the strength of those publications, notwithstanding that she didn't meet their grades requirement. So I would encourage you to publish anywhere, well, not anywhere, but you know what I mean. You know, a decent trade journal, you do not have to be in what's known as a scholarly journal.
Yes.
Do you have a sense of how many people usually apply for each competition?
I have no idea, and I think it also varies from one competition to the other. Sometimes the literature of the competition will tell you, last year we had over 30 entries. It's not thousands, and it's not hundreds either. The numbers are really much smaller than you might think, and so the odds are in your favor. One other thing I wanted to point out, this is the fall issue of the BLS Law Notes, which I think we still have available in the school. And on page 15, there is an article about 7 students who last year entered and won writing competitions. And there are little descriptions of the competition, a picture of each student. And this is awfully nice when, you know, it's sort of one more benefit that can occur. Is to, in addition to being published, to be able to put that on your resume, to have the cash prize that goes with the writing competition, to be part of your school's alumni newsletter and to get recognition in that way is also something that I think can be very satisfying. Maybe not as much as winning a lot of money, but I think, Jennifer, did you knew that this was in here?
Yes, I knew it was in there. I have like 10 copies that I give out to all my family members.
Okay, well, that's important too. Anything else? Any other questions?
I just had one more thing.
Yes.
My particular writing competition that I won, they also published my article in the State Bar's Labor Employment Section newsletter. So some of the competitions, actually you're winning a competition and you're able to say that you were published as well. So that's just something to think about.
I just, if I may, just add something also that while, yes, a good thing about writing competitions is that most often you're using something you've already written. Let's say you really like to write and perhaps you're particularly interested in a particular subject matter and you didn't get on Law Review or Journal and you would like to publish, then seek out a professor and do an independent study. I mean, that's where you will actually have to decide to do something affirmatively on your own, but you get credit for that. And I would encourage you to do that.
I have a friend actually who never did an independent study, but she just wrote a paper on her own. She was really interested in a particular topic, and submitted it to the open note journal process and didn't get accepted, and then eventually sent it out to other journals and it got published. So.
As with everything else, as Jennifer said, being persistent is what you need to do, because you never quite know what's going to work out. But if you are persistent and are aware of the opportunities, then you can find something that can work out very well for you. If you don't remember my name, then go back to the writing competition on the website, and my name is there with the phone number and email address, so that if you have any questions, either in the next couple of days or for the next 2.5 years, just let me know, and I'd be happy to talk with you. Okay, thank you all for coming.